Welcome to running on Reddit r/MaliciousCompliance, where sometimes the best way to get what you want is by playing by someone else's rules. Had forgotten about this story until the other day when I was chatting with a friend I went to high school with. It's silly, but I think it fits. It was the late 90s. I was still wearing too much flannel and continuing my historical trend of keeping books from the library much too long. I had a paper due for my sophomore global studies class, so I naturally took out more books than I could read, wrote the essay, and completely forgot about the books piled in the corner of my bedroom. After a series of overdue slips sent to my homeroom, I eventually did return the 4 or 5 books one sunny afternoon in the anonymous Dropbook during a study period. Promptly moved on to bigger and better things. About 2 weeks later, I was called down to the assistant principal's office in that space of time before classes officially started. That was reserved for one thing, and one thing only, the reprobates and delinquents that were in trouble. I walked the halls thinking that surely this was just a timing mishap, and I was being summoned to receive congratulations for some kind of award I didn't know I had entered into competition for. Yup, he just wants to prepare me for the surprise ticker tape parade. I was wholly unprepared to hear that I was receiving lunch detention to start immediately because I had not returned a single book that I still remember was slim and had a white and red cover from my GS paper research. I tried to argue that there was a mistake since I was sure, like I'm sure, that I have fingertips, that I had returned it. But he could not be moved, and I was sentenced to indefinite lunch detention until I either returned the book or paid the $16 to replace it. I left the office late for first period, defeated, but kept my head held high at lunch later that day as I walked past the entirety of the cafeteria, which held a couple hundred of my peers. Plastic food tray in hand, I went down the hall to the old shop classroom that had since been moved and the awaiting detention. I checked in with Mrs. Brown at her desk in front and took an inconspicuous seat in the back. Staring down at my canned peach slices, I braced for the worst. A murderous ruckus was going to break out any minute, I could tell. But once my ears stopped ringing, I discovered that it was really a calm escape from the crowded and rowdy lunchroom. I ate slowly that day, enjoyed my young thoughts in blissful quiet, and wondered what kind of heaven was this. To be fair, I did search far and wide for that book that first day. Attempts to find it in my locker, bedroom, and backpack were fruitless, and the general consensus in my home was that the school was being ridiculous. I certainly wasn't going to pay for something I didn't lose. So the next day, considering my brief brush with the law and the invisible stain already attached to my reputation, I went armed with a book and my lunch past the maddening crowds to the detention room. I sat there, day after day, for nearly 2 months of lunches. In retrospect, to this day those remain some of the most relaxing lunch breaks of my life. I had around 40 solid minutes to recharge in, mostly, complete silence with my reasonably priced lunch, and whatever book I was currently reading. I had to recount my origin story a few times, since no one could figure out how the quiet bookworm of a girl who had never been in trouble before had landed in the wilds of detention. But I was mostly left to my own devices in this newly found peaceful retreat. I was friendly with Mrs. Brown, who had worked for the district of my small town since I was in elementary school, and even hooked her up with a sweet horse whisper poster that she loved from my family's mom and pop video store. She must have felt bad for me, because somewhere around the 1-month mark she started up a collection to cover the cost of the book. She added the initial donation, but teachers who would stop by to chit chat would add loose change to it, and the race to buy my freedom was on. After a few weeks she handed me just under $7. My love of solitude was no match for the guilt of carrying around that money or my mom, who had just started a new job in the school district. So with a heavy heart I paid in full for the missing book and went back to my old lunch table in the thick of the action. Months later, during the last week of school, I was called down to the library at my convenience, and with sweaty palms forced myself to face the music over what was inevitably going to be yet another overdue book at the end of the day. Well, lo and be ducking hold, the end of year inventory check had located the book as waylaid in the wrong section of the library. I received a few sheepish looks from the librarians as they refunded the money and apologized in a backward way that still made me the bad guy, as overdue books are the real blemish on one's character, so how were they to assume that I didn't lose the book? Remember my mom's new job in the school? Well, she just happened to be walking by the library just as I was finishing up, and to say that she laid into them is far too extreme sounding. But she did scold some stern-faced librarians into giving me a proper apology. She also demanded that they look into reforming their system and, my favorite part, take the proper measures to expunge my record. She was very concerned about me carrying around the albatross of false accusation apparently, and just like that my life of crime was over. Wonder if OP would have preferred to enjoy the peaceful lunches for a while longer, or if they were happy to have the book paid off. 5 years ago, I was hit by a car while riding my bicycle. The driver turned across the front of me, pretty much into me, and I had absolutely nowhere to go. I hit the passenger door of the car, then tumbled over the front of the car, still clipped into my pedals, taking it with me. The car was pretty damaged. I dented the door, scratched the paint in many places, ripped the door mirror off, smashed the glass, cracked the windscreen, windshield, and dented/scratched the bonnet, hood. My bicycle emerged fairly well. I think I broke its fall mostly. The front wheel was bent, the saddle torn, and the pedal/bar tape damaged from hitting the road. I broke my collarbone and lost a lot of skin in various places that hit the road. I trashed my helmet and my shorts too. The driver said, "Sorry mate, I did not see you," which was pretty obvious. The car was his daughter's, and he was taking his grandson out for an ice cream. The poor little boy got covered in glass from the door window that exploded inwards when I hit it, but seemed to be okay. The driver gave me his phone number and I took a photo of his driving license and insurance details along with a pile of photos at the scene. I crucially got the details of 2 witnesses too before I passed out from the pain. This all happened on a Friday. I got patched up at the hospital and my partner was able to get my bike home. Because of my broken collarbone, I was in a huge amount of pain, while the doctors could figure out if it needed to be pinned or not over the weekend. On the Saturday morning I called the driver and his phone went straight to voicemail. I had taken a good look at my bike and figured out it needed about £350 worth of parts, wheel, forks, saddle, new bar tape etc, and something for my cracked phone screen. I guessed £150. On the message I left him, I said that I was not sure if he wanted to pay for the parts or go through his insurance. His daughter called me back and shouted and swore at me for damaging her car. I explained that he has turned across the front of me and it was his poor driving to blame. I mentioned that I was sitting on my sofa with a broken collarbone as a result of him and all I wanted was to get my bike fixed. "You will never get a penny from me. Talk to the police if you want to. We will tell them that it was not my car. You will never get a penny from us." Okay, I can comply with that. I called the local police station and they sent a constable down to see me. I carefully explained what had happened and showed him the photos from the scene, the damage to my bicycle, phone, helmet and shorts, gave him the details of the witness and several cups of tea, and he advised me to get a solicitor on the case too. So I did just that. My bicycle insurance has legal aid cover, so I used it. Long story short, I had 3 surgeries on my shoulder over the next 18 months or so. The insurance details that the driver gave me was fake. The daughter's insurance company did not cover her father as a driver. The driver had 6 points on his license already, but crucially the police found he had insurance with a company that did cover him on her car, but only for third-party cover. He only admitted this when they threatened to charge him with driving without insurance and documentation fraud. The police eventually convicted him and gave him enough points to ban him from driving for a year and fined him £1,500 plus costs. The insurance company that he was with was one of these "we only cover really bad drivers." Obviously did not pay out for the damage to the car. This was probably another £1,500 or more. The insurance company paid for my bicycle damage, £550 once assessed by a local shop. They also paid for my clothing and helmet, £200, and my phone screen, £180. Then finally the insurance company paid compensation for my injuries and time off, etc. I would have been quite happy for them to pay for my initial assessment of my bicycle and phone damage, but as they wanted to make my life difficult, it cost them thousands, got the driver banned, and the resulting compensation was a massive bonus for my savings account. Sounds like OP got more than just a few pennies out of that. Glad that horrible, lying driver got taken off the road too. Let me know in the comments down below if you've ever seen someone driving like an idiot. This might be a rarity for this sub, as I'm the one who had the malicious compliance done to by someone else, but I had to respect it and thought it was worthy for this subreddit. Context: I own an escape room company in a town which borders a pretty touristy area and is very close to an airport. As such, we tend to get a lot of bookings from people all over the UK who are visiting the area for the weekend, or international people coming to do an escape room on the way to the airport. We only take online bookings and don't take walk-ins, therefore the site is only really manned whenever we have bookings. As such, our cancellation policy is that we only allow refunds if the cancellation is more than 24 hours before the scheduled start time. If it is 2 to 24 hours before the start time, we can only reschedule the booking. Now, it's worth mentioning that for the majority of cases, weekdays, we are pretty relaxed with our policy, as long as it doesn't cause any big issues, and try our best to accommodate a group, as usually I'm the one hosting them, so there's not any additional expenses on our part, that is staff wages / loss of income from other potential customers. However, the only day where this policy is really relevant is on Saturday, where we are almost always entirely booked from morning to night and have staff members working for us. So any cancelled slots would most likely have been filled by other customers, and we are of course still paying our staff for that time. Although I must say, we have only ever had to enforce this policy a couple of times, as we usually accommodate a group in some shape or form. Now onto the malicious compliance. So I get a call earlier today from a gentleman with a thick Scottish accent that was scheduled to come in with his group in around 2.5 hours from the time of the call. The group said that they would be unable to make their booking as they were running late with some other activities or something like that, and asked to reschedule the booking for a later slot. I checked our schedule, but didn't have any slots left for today in any of our rooms. He then asked for a refund as they would be returning back to Glasgow tonight and didn't know when they would be next down here. I told him our policy and that our system only allows reschedules instead of refunds due to the time frame, and explained that given it's a Saturday we can't refund so close to the time as staff has been arranged, slot would have been booked etc, etc. Rescheduling wouldn't have worked for them as they wouldn't be in the area anytime soon. After a short pause, he asked if we had any free slots to schedule for next month. I checked the system and offered to move the booking to the same time on the 16th of November, to which he said yeah, I think that works. I changed the time on the system and informed him he would get an email confirming the new time slot. He replied great, so the booking is more than 24 hours away now, right? Me yes, it's booked in for 4 weeks time from today. Him right, so the booking is more than 24 hours away. I won't be able to make it. Can I have a refund? I paused for a second trying to process what had just happened in my head and realized that he had found a loophole in the system. Technically, his booking was more than 24 hours away, so he is technically entitled to a refund. I started laughing and congratulated him on beating the system as I processed his refund. Sounds like that customer saw the opportunity and made their escape. If you like the content and want to support the channel, like and subscribe right now, or you'll be running on fumes. A bar in my town used to host live bands all the time until one of the neighbors complained about the noise. It turns out the zoning rules didn't allow them to have live music and they almost got shut down. The bar owner read over said zoning rules and notices that the wording forbade them to have live music indoors, but they could have it outdoors. So they moved the stage to the patio section, where it would be even louder for the neighbors and still be legal. They still have live music sometimes, but not nearly as often as they used to. Don't want to push their luck, I guess. I wonder if business went up more when they moved the band outside. Could have drawn quite the crowd. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe. and turn on the bell or you'll be running on fumes. See you in the next video.